Every year I get older, weirder, and way more delusional, and my birthday is next week, so the simulation that is my life is due an expansion pack. In fact, call me EA, because much like the capitalist dystopia they turned The Sims into, I am also going to install my life improvements in multiple small bites of content rather than one comprehensive and satisfying DLC. Because I am a person, not a fucking video game company. EA, you suck. Anyways, this video is sponsored by... Just kidding. Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Mia and I chat shit while I make shit. So if you like making things or just background noise while you do your dishes, hit subscribe. And if you end up liking this video, give it a like, hype, comment for engagement. It really helps the channel, so I appreciate it. Thank you. As a quick side note, I got my channel avatars made. Guys, look how perfect these are. I'll put all the details of the artist. It's Devon Smith. I'll put everything in the description box, but moment of appreciation because I love them. Anyways, okay, back to the video. This video is not about The Sims, yeah, sorry for the quick detour. It is about how I'm planning to change my life over the next 12 months and potentially, maybe, hopefully, help you to do the same. I've created a whole action plan with monthly breakdowns and free templates that you can use to recreate this challenge yourself at home. But first, what are we doing? Listen, I know that New Year is the time for dramatic change. All the how to become unrecognizable and change your life in 30 days videos are popping off. And I love that. Okay, if I could do that and have it create a long-lasting impact on my life, best believe I would. However, I have suffered myself for almost 27 years at this point, and so this video is not that. This video is a slow and steady wins the race approach, a year-long life improvement project that prioritizes the practical, the sustainable, and the actually feels good internally over the dramatic aesthetic transformation. This project factors in things like the unrelenting ADHD demons plaguing my brain and the fickle mistress that is my motivation levels. But in more literal terms, it's a series of pre-planned life improvement experiments over the course of the next 12 months, tailored to fit my specific life goals. So why monthly experiments? We can make a drinking game out of how many times I'm going to say ADHD in this video, apologies in advance, but also I'm fighting for my life, so it kind of is what it is. So the idea of monthly experiments, basically I think a lot, ineffectively, but still thoughts, and goal setting and tracking is something that I have pondered extensively because on paper, I am a goal girly. I love vision boards, I love my planner, I love moving forwards in my life, and yet I cannot set and track goals. I'll have vague directions, loose life plans I plod along towards, but specific goal setting and monitoring is just not my strong suit. Plus, even if I set a goal, a lot of the time I'm essentially just guessing at what I should want or what I should do, and then even if I hit it, it's just like, cool, I guess this is success, and that's okay. It's hardly ruining my life. I mean, I don't think it is. I guess there could be a timeline where type Amy is already retired and eating bonbons in her lake house, but I've just wondered if maybe there's an alternative way, and maybe that way is to decenter linear goals and what our preconceived notion of success looks like in favor of a more experimental approach. Enter the experimental mindset. Now, bear with me here, I promise it's relevant, but one of the benefits of keeping a media journal is that it's really easy to pinpoint direct sources of inspiration, even if they've been brewing subconsciously for a few months. There are many videos and articles and books that inspired this project, and I'll mention them as they become relevant, but the concept of the experimental mindset was 100% adopted from the video Fix Your Destructive Mindset in 15 Minutes on Big Think. Obviously, go watch that video, it's linked in the description, as is the written version over on their Substack, because personally, if I'm learning, I prefer reading, but that's just me. But anyways, a brief top line is it talks about how there are 3 subconscious mindsets that hold us back. Cynicism, perfectionism, and escapism. And we can plot each of these mindsets on a grid against 2 characteristics: ambition and curiosity. Escapism is high curiosity but low ambition, whereas perfectionism is high ambition but low curiosity, and cynicism is just low all-round negative vibes. And these mindsets are fluid, by the way, they can all be changed. The sweet spot, however, is the mindset that has high ambition and high curiosity, the experimental mindset. To quote, in an experimental mindset, you're open to uncertainty. You see it as an opportunity to explore, to grow, and to learn. When you have an experimental mindset, instead of chasing those linear goals that give you the illusion of certainty, you're open to designing experiments. Having an experimental mindset means seeing failures as data points that you can learn from. It means being open to making mistakes because you know you're going to learn from them. It means embracing the fact that you might not have a plan, that you don't know what's coming, and this is great. It means you can design your life in a way that is conscious and connected. Now, for me personally, I've had to reframe my mindset a lot as an adult because of the aforementioned ADHD demons. I remember a tweet or something that made the rounds a few years ago that's basically like, unmedicated ADHD is just a pendulum swing between perfectionism and rampant chaos. And I could not agree with anything more. So the experimentation mindset, even before I had a name for it, is something I've really tried to adopt in my life because being too rigid with my thinking was ultimately incompatible with my brain, and it just made me sad. But since learning about the concept of the experimental mindset, I really want to lean into it for 2026 and see how it goes. Okay, so we are going to talk more about how to cultivate an experimental mindset later in this video when we get to setting our experiments. But for now, just put a pin in this and remember that the take home is that we are setting experiments to uncover how we want to live our best life rather than setting rigid goals based off predictions of what that best life would be. Step 1, explore your curiosity, aka mind map. So my first step was actually to create a mind map with the goal of exploring my motivations, goals, influences, all that jazz. Basically an exercise to think on paper and figure out what areas of my life I really wanted to improve. I made a point to do this before looking at vision board inspiration or anything like that, just so that these points were internally driven. And fun fact, I'm using an accordion insert of my new commonplace journal for this. Something that really helped me with this step was not focusing too much on specific things and more the intention behind them. So like for example, buying a house. I really want to buy a house, that's a goal of mine. But if we drill into that, it's more that I want the perceived security of having a house, the financial benefit of not throwing money away on rent, and honestly, the creative project of having a house I own to decorate. Obviously, not saying that's a bad goal, but really that my ultimate goal is financial security, and owning a house is just an idea I have of what that looks like. So I put the goal as financial security with buying a house as an idea. A few other things that came up for me were digital hygiene, creative hobbies, writing, cognition, financial security, career purpose. Side note, I've been reading Moral Ambition and I haven't finished it by the way, so grain of salt for this, but so far it's about how we dedicate so much of our time to work, 80,000 hours across our lifetimes from memory, and how if you were to dedicate your career in that time to a worthy cause like climate change, you could have a bigger impact than you probably feel like you could. And it's definitely been making me consider my impact and the best use of my skills towards causes I care about. You know, unfortunately, it's also made me realize, like, do I have any skills? I don't know. But anyways, I'm just shouting the book out because A, book recommendation, but B, it did also influence this 2026 challenge in terms of being a motivating force for some of the career direction and motivation that I have. Anyways, moving on. Step 2, create visual reminders, aka vision boarding. Now, once I identified my target areas, I went on to create a vision board based off that mind map. Visualization is a really powerful tool. You've probably heard this a million times, but it is true. I watched a great video recently that was about the neuroscience of visualization, and that is linked below, but that was how to make a vision board that actually works in 2026 by Dr. Izzy Seeley. Sorry if I'm saying that wrong. Again, go watch it. There's a ton of useful information in there, but one of the really interesting things that she shared was about our brain's value tagging system. In the dumbest reiteration possible, because I am not a science girly, basically our brains are able to process an insane amount of information, about 11 million pieces of information per second, but our conscious mind can only handle about 50. So to stop us from going literally insane, our subconscious filters things out and tries to give us only the information that we need. Part of this process is called value tagging, which is where our brain recognizes information as important based off its emotional significance or relevance to our goals. Dr. Izzy gave the example of her being pregnant and suddenly seeing babies everywhere, but all I could think of was this game that my coworker and I play when we walk home. Let's call it Summon the Bald Men. It is incredibly dumb, and no hate to the bald men, okay? No tea, no shade. It's just one day we realized as we're walking home that we work with a lot of bald men, just, you know, just is what it is. And we're walking home and we were like, man, there are people everywhere. But like, there are no bald men, how weird. And then we said that and there were bald men everywhere. And it's really funny because now every time we walk back, at some point we'll be like, where are the bald men? And suddenly droves of bald men will just start exiting their offices. It is comical because it literally works like magic every time. Now, In reality, I work in finance, okay? The ball men were always there. But following this logic, our game just signals to my brain, hey, bald men are important right now. So information you receive about them should be forwarded to my conscious mind. I feel we've got a bit off track. So for vision boards, you want them to be in places you will regularly see them. So I've got 3 currently. One is in my weekly planner's opening page, one is next to my desk, and one is as my phone screen. And this one is great because it makes me feel kind of guilty if I'm looking at my phone for no reason. The take home for this section is that creating vision boards is a great way to tap into our brain's value tagging system by sending our brain regular visual reminders of what goals are important to us and therefore what information should be elevated to conscious processing, because we might be missing opportunities simply because our subconscious is not registering them as important. And by the end of these 2 exercises, I had a really good idea of what areas in my life I wanted to focus on for 2026, and now we can move on to stage 2, setting the experiments. But first, let's take it back to Anne Lawler-Kump and Big Think for a minute and talk about how to cultivate an experimental mindset. Now, there's a simple 4-step framework that Anne Law shares for creating an experimental mindset that's based off the scientific approach. Step 1, observe your current situation. Step 2, ask a research question. Step 3, design a tiny experiment. And step 4, analyze results and decide on next steps. When you're creating your experiments, something she suggests is to set a commitment pact, which for me is basically this video, this whole thing. So with commitment pacts, you basically say to yourself, I will do this thing for this specific duration, and you do it. The idea is to choose small, purposeful experiments, stick it out for the pre-agreed experiment timeframe, and assess from there. To quote, a pact is actionable. This is something you need to be able to do right now. You don't need extra resources. You don't need help from other people. This is something you can try straight away. It doesn't have to be something crazy, and more importantly, it doesn't have to stick. The distinction between habits versus experiments is something that drew me to this a lot. So a habit, as she explains it, is something that you know is good and you want to do indefinitely. Whereas with an experiment, you don't know if it will work for you. And that's okay. The point is to find out. Let's move on to setting my monthly experiments and my Notion setup. With all of this in mind, I decided to set myself a series of small experiments to complete throughout 2026, each focusing on different categories of my life I've identified for improvement. For this, I created a Notion template with 2 sections. Section 1 is a quarterly month-to-month view, so there's a dedicated page for each month of 2026 where I can track whatever experiments I'm doing with some brief notes about them as I go. I separated this quarterly because while most of my experiments I reckon will be a month or less, some might span longer, so it's an easy way to track those too. And then section 2 is a big brain dump of experiment ideas. The idea being that I can drag and drop experiments into each month as I decide to do them and go in and add more if I feel inspired by new things throughout the year. While I do have some of these pre-assigned as of right now, other than January's experiments, this is completely open to change because again, the whole point of this is that there isn't a predetermined destination and that this can and will change with me. Personally, I love Notion because it also works as a bit of a resource bank where that's applicable. So for example, with my B-Road algorithm experiment, I've got a content bank within the experiment page for me to reference and have easy access to links and things like that. I tend to use digital planning tools more for big picture project overviews and resource management, but for my day-to-day tracking, I prefer paper. So my Notion setup doesn't have habit trackers or anything like that, but my Filofax planner does. Okay, so what are some of the experiments I'm planning to try? Again, this is not the be-all end-all, but some of the things on my list are try lat tricking for 15 minutes every day. There's some really interesting research about the cognitive benefits of crafting, and this is already a hobby that I have. I've already got all the supplies, so I want to find out if setting time aside to do it more regularly will actually make me feel any better. Being my own algorithm. Basically, setting time aside to curate everything I can watch in a week and try to avoid the infinite scroll trap. It sounds good on paper, and I've seen a few videos about it that make me go, oh, that's a bit of me. But would it work in reality? Would it be too time consuming? That's what we're trying to find out. Trying to keep a commonplace journal for 3 months. If you've watched my 2025 journal ecosystem video, you will know that I tried and failed to keep a commonplace journal in the past. But Listen, I feel like things are a bit different now, okay? Because I have been using my media journal and just writing in my journals in general, and I just have this urge to commonplace and store quotes and random bits of knowledge in a set area. So I want to try this again, going analog with my media, i.e. CDs and physical books. Again, this is one that might end up being inconvenient and not working, but it might also be great. And that's the point. We're just trying these things out to see. And then a few others were just like trying a 30-minute yoga video every day and not going on my phone for the first hour or two of my day, and so on and so forth. So that's my plan. I'm so excited about this, and I feel like the more relaxed approach to goal setting and honestly the novelty of trying new things all the time might work super well for my brain. To be clear though, I don't know, and that's kind of the point. If it fails, well, that's still an outcome.